The ship is now resting exactly where it landed 2 hours ago, and so far there is no sign of life from inside it. Troops have been rushed across the Potomac River from Fort Myer and have thrown a cordon around the ship. They're supported by tanks, artillery, and machine guns. Behind the police lines, there's a huge crowd of curiosity seekers. The Army has taken every precaution to meet any emergency which may develop. Every eye, every weapon is trained on the ship. It's been that way for 2 hours, and the tension is just beginning. Just a minute, ladies and gentlemen. I think something is happening.
We have come to visit you in peace and with goodwill.
Hello, and welcome to Book versus Movie. This is a podcast where we read books that have been adapted into movies, and then we try to decide which we like better, the book or the movie. I am Margot P. of coloniabook.com, and this is my good friend and co-host, Margot D. of Brooklyn Fit Chick.
Hi, everyone.
Oh, I made it through the intro. Woo! Okay, I'm just going to warn you all. There's construction going on at my house, and it's maybe 8 feet away from me. They're drilling, so it's just we might be hearing a little bit of that. So welcome. It's finally October. I can't even tell you how excited I am for it to be October, even though I was just telling you out there, I was in triple digits yesterday of heat. But October is my favorite.
Same.
Here at Book versus Movie, October was when we do spooky, creepy, maybe a little sci-fi. And we've been doing the show for 10 years. So we are constantly looking for suggestions. We try to give you a brand new episode every single week. Here are the rules. If you're new, maybe you just love this movie like we do. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
The rules are as such. We will consider any movie that has been adapted from any literary source, so long as A, the movie is streaming on a major platform, or B, the source material has to be very easy to get our hands on. Like today's was, I found it for free on the internet. I found it in some archive. It was very easy to find. Mm-hmm. So we will talk, if it's been adapted from a novel, or a novella, or a nonfiction book, or a magazine article, a song. I was thinking this morning about we've done quite a few movies adapted from songs.
And we have something fun coming up in November.
So those are the rules. They're it's pretty open. So if you have suggestions, if you want to meet other listeners of this podcast, there's a few places where you can do that and interact with us on the internet.
We do have a basic Facebook page. Be sure to like it, but we're much more interactive in our private Facebook group. You type in Book VS Movie Podcast Group in Facebook and ask to join. And we really do just talk about books and movies there. And we have a list going of all the past shows and all the ideas that people have. It's pretty exciting. We're also on Twitter, Threads, and Instagram. And at all those places, you spell out book versus a movie. And then we have an old-timey email. You spell out book versus movie podcast at gmail.com and give us your suggestions. Or if you would like some stickers, we'd be happy to send you some stickers in the mail. Just send us your address via the email.
And if you really enjoy the show and would like to help keep us in books and movies, you can also support us on Patreon.
Right. Patreon. As Margos said, we've been doing the show for 10 years now officially. I can't believe it, by the way. We just had like our anniversary on Twitter. I was like, oh my God, 10 years. Anyway, we are putting all of our episodes from 2021 and then previous to that on the Patreon wall. Recently, we put up there Elvis and Me, In a Lonely Place, The Parent Trap, The Invisible Man, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Coming up is The Picture of Dorian Gray, The Bad Seed, and Sleeping Beauty. All of those are on the Patreon wall. Oh, also in October, all of our Stephen King episodes will be for free on our Patreon page. So you can go check that out for yourselves. We want to thank Ben, who recently joined us. Thank you, Ben, for supporting us. We really use the money just for the books and the movies. We're a very small show. We keep it contained. And also another way you can help us out is with a review wherever you get your podcasts. If you can leave us a few stars or just tell a friend about the show. Any of those things would be really helpful.
So today we are kicking off our 10th October.
Yes.
Oh, wow. I think our October theme month is one of the first ones that we did. It was one of the first theme month concepts that we started. So we've done a lot of spooky, scary, creepy movies over the years. Today we're doing The Day the Earth Stood Still. We're not doing the Keanu Reeves one, which I still have not seen. Did you watch it?
I watched it last night. You didn't miss anything.
Okay, good.
Not good. Keanu Reeves, when people make fun of Keanu Reeves' acting, they mean what he's doing in that movie.
Oh, no.
Very
Okay.
stiff. Though the robot is kind of cool. I will say that. The robot is really cool. But other than that, yeah.
So we'll get into this fascinating and extremely influential movie in just a little bit. But before that, we're going to talk about the source material, which is a short story called Farewell to the Master by an author named Hiram Gilmore Bates III.
Harry Bates was born in Pittsburgh in 19. He was an early adopter into pulp magazines. He worked for several of them. One of them was called Clayton Publications. The original story for this occurred in Astounding magazine. It's Astounding Science Fiction, and that was in October 1940. His big thing I found out about Harry was that when it came to science writing, he was really concerned with it being accurate to science fiction writing, excuse me. So it was something he really focused on, whereas other writers were about, plot and relatability and stuff. He was much more focused on, was this actually possible? Like he tried to really kind of make it, have it grounded in real science to make it more appealing to people. So this is his most well-known work. He worked in the industry for many years. Unfortunately, by the time he was 60, he had a problem with rheumatoid arthritis. By the time he was 60 in 1960, he had to get Social Security because he just couldn't even hold a pen. His knuckles were so swollen. But he was well liked in the industry. He was a big supporter of science fiction. We should say something very important about this time, like 1940 and then 1951, when this movie comes out, we're going into World War II. So we have this rise of fascism. So there's a lot of talk in the arts about fascism and fighting power and how do how much do you put into helping other people with, but then 1951, it's after World War II, but it's the rise of the Cold War. And so this is all about like, a lot of science fiction, which I like about science fiction is it does make the human, talks about humanity and man's responsibility to other men and how we behave under stress. We can fix problems and how we can help people, but also how power can corrupt. It was sort of like this niche in the alley of publishing was science fiction and then the gory stories and stuff like that. But then when the world gets horrifying, it kind of does make sense. This stuff is like very relatable. And it's a way to kind of put your emotions into things is to kind of figure out like scientifically what's going on and how can we stop something. Anyway, he lived to be 80. This is his big story. He sold it for $500. I said to Margot, this book, we have a link in the show notes for you can get this story for yourselves. It's on audiobooks. I found some audiobooks on YouTube. This is quite possibly the dullest story I found this very hard to read, and it's not a lot of pages.
Here's the thing. I'm trying to be fair. Number one, it's 1940. It's a pre-Rod Serling
Yes.
the world. And these magazines were very popular, as you said, and they had to churn out a lot of content. Ray Bradbury, we talked about, he did a lot of stories like this for similar magazines. I'm sorry to say, this is not a Ray Bradbury. It's plausible.
Sure.
But in reading it, I felt in reading it, couple of things. Number one, I saw the ending coming from a mile away. It's one of these things where the title gives away the ending, which is never a good tactic.
Yes.
And I also was like, this is not for me. I'm not the intended audience here. Maybe if I were like a real sci-fi head, if I were a kid, who was just like blazing through these magazines on a weekly basis, I might be into this story. We'll talk about the plot points of the source material because it is very different than the movie. But I can see, though, also, over the years, like thinking about the concept in a similar vein. Again, I'm going to bring up Jaws yet again, where you're like, well, there's an interesting idea in there. That interesting idea then gets, put in the right hands, gets fleshed out into a movie length story. But the plot of the original story is extremely simple. And actually the movie plot's pretty simple too. It has the movie has much more, I feel like it has much more of a message.
Oh, absolutely.
So let's talk about the original story. Again, this is pre-World War II. So we really must bear this in mind. So this is pre the atom bomb, pre a lot of technology that we take for granted. This is very few people even had telephones. Some had radios. And, it's a very, very different
Right.
United States that we're talking about here. So when we're talking about like state of the art science, it's not at anything remotely like state of the art science when the movie's being produced.
Mm-hmm.
Our narrator, he's a reporter. He's a photojournalist, lives in the capital, Washington, D.C. He covers the news beat.
It's okay.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, it's okay.
He covers the news beat there. So naturally, he is the one to cover when a spaceship lands in our nation's capital. And this, I think, is a very interesting comment on our culture. This did pique my interest, I must say. So these aliens could have landed at any capital or any country on the planet. Where do they land? They land in the United States. And even in 1940, we kind of love our guns. We're kind of in love with our guns here, right? So this spaceship lands. There's military there, there's police there, there's the people are there, they want to see looky-loos. The spaceship opens up and out walks this alien. In the story, he's called, the alien's name is the same as in the movie. His name is Klaatu.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I am Klaatu, I come in peace. And right away, what happens in the capital of the United States? Somebody shoots him and he dies.
Yeah.
He like barely says, I'm here, I mean no harm. Pew! No more Klaatu. Then out comes this big robot. And I think maybe he introduces the robot. The robot's name is Newt.
Yes.
G-N-U-T.
Yes.
In the story, not Gort as in the movie. Gort, I think, is easier. Ganut, who knows? But anyway.
Oh, I was going to say,
robot.
I listened to an audio.
The robot.
So I listened to an audiobook and
how'd they pronounce it?
Gunt. And I'm like, no, it's G-N-U-T. It's Newt.
No.
It's G-N is
It's definitely not spelled that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. So the robot observes that the Klaatu has died and freezes in place and does not move for just freezes solid. And so everybody assumes, Klaatu, this is Klaatu's robot. And now that Klaatu is gone, the robot has gone dormant and has no purpose. And so it's just sitting there silently. Our narrator, the photojournalist, continues to observe. It's like, it reminded me of Men in Black, where they talked about the World's Fair with the dome and, with the sphere and the obelisk kind of thing. And people just assume that they're just these stationary things and they turns out they're spaceships. So it's similar. This robot is so still and the spaceship is still there. People just kind of regard them as they would statues. They don't really think that anything is really going on. I'm trying to make this shorter. The photojournalist notices little variations when he comes back to check on the robot. Like the robot's in a slightly different position
Right.
than or seems to have moved. And he's a photojournalist, so he's taking pictures and he figures out like, yeah, something's going on. So he stays overnight to observe the and I think they build like a museum around the robot, right? And the
so
spaceship.
heavy they can't lift the robot, or it's like 8 feet tall, this robot.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have eyes.
Right.
And it's naked except for like a loincloth kind of thing covering it. It's just a very odd thing, but like Margos said, it reminds me of
weird.
Rosie on the Jetsons. Remember when she would shut down? So this,
yeah, very that.
yeah, it shuts down, and it's so heavy that they can't lift it. So it's DC. They're like, let's make a museum. You know, that's you and I've been to DC. They have tons of museums there. So he notices that it's just incrementally, but it is the nude is moving. So he sneaks onto the ship. And then he records what's happening there.
Yes. He observes that. So he hides out overnight, haunted house style. He observes that every single night, the robot comes to life and goes into the spaceship and does something. And then comes back out and assumes, something close to what its original position was and goes back to being dormant. And so one night, when the robot goes into the spaceship, he follows Cliff, our journalist, follows the robot in. Can't really make sense of what all is going on. Is it the robot is trying to restore life to Klaatu? Is that how it goes? I'm suddenly not remembering.
Yeah.
Because at this point, there's a lot of, like Margot said, there's a lot of science gobbledygook. To me, it's gobbledygook, but I'm sure it's all very plausible and can be proven, and it's all according to existing principles.
I think he sacrificed dialogue and character in the pursuit of that. I think because there's just, I can't tell the difference between Klaatu and Cliff Sutherland sometimes.
There's this plot point about before they shot Klaatu, for which they are very apologetic. And they're like, that we are deeply ashamed that this happens. We're so sorry. Before Klaatu is shot, someone makes a recording of Klaatu's voice. Saying like, I'm Klaatu when I'm here in peace and yada, yada. They're somehow using that recording to help restore Newt or whatever he's called is somehow using that with science to restore life to Klaatu. And Klaatu does come back to life. It's like a clone. He's cloning him.
Right.
Using a recording of his voice somehow, but the recording is not perfect. So the clone is not perfect. So the journalist is trying to help Newt in this project. And he tries to get the original thing that they used to record the voice. Again, this is all very rudimentary, kind of crude technology to compare to 10 years later. He brings him the original, tape recorder, essentially, that they used to record this brief message before they shot the guy. And spoiler alert, here's the spoiler alert that we all saw coming a mile away because what's the name of the story again? So Cliff says, here's the recording, dude. I know, and there's all this rigmarole to get it. Here you go. I hope you're able to restore life to your master. And Newt finally speaks to Cliff and he says, you misunderstand. I am the master. And that's the story. So, I mean, it's just,
it's fine. I mean,
it's fine.
Back then also, like Marlowe said, these were very popular. Monthly magazines were very heavy. They were larger and they were very heavy with all ads. So this was like on page 40. It wasn't even like a cover story. It does fine. It's like I said, it's 1940 and then America, we go to war and we have our war pictures and things like that. And then the war is over. We have this rise in science fiction going on.
And we have, because of the war, huge leaps and bounds in technology and science that have happened.
Right.
Humongous.
Which does happen, unfortunately. That is like what happens if the technology does change and gets more impressive. So Fox is looking at properties and they're looking at short stories and books and plays and things like that. And somebody in the story department says, hey, I read this one time a short story. What do you think? Do you think we can do something with it? We should also say that science fiction movies weren't popular. Okay, this is one of the first, if not the first, so that's like a major release. That's a major studio release.
So because these pulp magazines, as we said, they're churning them out. They're kind of for kids and for adults, but a certain kind of adult. So the movies, I saw that there weren't science fiction movies up until this point. There were, but they were, I'm just going to keep talking. They were more like a B movie type of a thing. So this is really one of the first, I think.
Yes,
so, right?
Absolutely.
Like where we put a real budget behind with real like established stars. I did not know that. Looking at the poster of this film, I think is doing us a disservice. First of all, this always drives me nuts. The scene on the poster like never happens in the film.
When he's carrying her? Or you mean
where he's carrying a blonde half-dressed woman.
Right.
Who is not in the movie. There's no such woman in this movie.
Did everybody have to do that after King Kong? Like, did they all have to have like some version of that?
I guess. So if you're looking at the poster, it looks like there's this robot who comes down from outer space. He steals beautiful women and takes them back up to space, or I don't know what all.
Which is not his thing.
That's not his thing. He's not into that. So it's a totally different thing. So, but anyway, boy, was I impressed by this film.
Yeah.
Do we have a trailer?
Yes, we do have a trailer. Let's talk. We'll play the trailer right now, and then we'll talk about this amazing movie.
We interrupt this program to give you a bulletin just received from one of our naval units at sea. A large object traveling at supersonic speed is headed over the North Atlantic toward the east coast of the United States.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Drew Pearson. We bring you this special radio television broadcast in order to give you the very latest information on an amazing phenomenon: the arrival of a space ship in Washington. The Army has taken every precaution to meet any emergency which may develop. Just a minute, ladies and gentlemen, I think something is happening.
I came here to give you these facts. But if you threaten to extend your violence, this earth of yours will be reduced to a burned out cinder.
But he's a robot. Without you, what could he do?
There's no limit to what he could do. He could destroy the earth.
All vehicles, close in. Let's go.
It's 20th Century Fox is our producer. Our director is Robert Wise. We talked about him when we talked about The Haunting and West Side Story. And I was looking at some old documentaries, and he's apparently the nicest person that ever existed in all of show business. He was really just a lovely, sweet man. The screenplay is from Edwin North, and he and Robert Wise were friends together during the war. I think the script is great. I think he did a really good job of taking this material and adapting it. Like, he really...
First of all, it's really fleshed out. We have characters that we care about.
Yep.
Yeah, it's quite...
Also, it's filmed, so it's secondary location. They had a second unit, they call it in show business, where they filmed it at Washington, D.C. And we were just doing that Judy Holliday movie, Born Yesterday. I think I'm going to go to D.C. because I need to take a vacation there because it makes me wistful for it. But they shot this on a lot, most of this. And they have... and there were many people that wanted to be a part of this production, including Spencer Tracy and Claude Rains were in contention to play the lead in this movie. But we have Michael Rennie, who's a British man and he was a theater actor and was unknown to Americans. And that's part of the reason why they picked him. And I think also just because he's tall and handsome, he makes a good.
It's so believable, right?
Oh.
It's really something. But I want to talk a little bit about the production.
Yes, please.
Before we get into the cast. Okay. Soundtrack, score, Bernard Herrmann. Just Bernard Herrmann in 1951. What?
It's incredible.
It's a great score.
Yes.
It's so good. Oh, go ahead.
Danny Elfman said that this was like the first soundtrack that he owned as a kid and like obsessed about it.
It's
and
brilliant.
I get it. Yeah.
It's got the theremin. We've got our orchestra. It's just dramatic enough because the dialogue is very plausible, kind of kitchen table-y sort of dialogue. It's very good, and so the score is really helping to heighten the drama. Our costumes.
Yes.
Our costume designer is Travilla. So we have the spaceman, which again, I think is very understated. But then we've got a lot of ordinary folk, different echelons of society that we're looking at with the costumes. This gentleman also did the costumes for Gentlemen Prefer Blondes.
Oh.
How to Marry a Millionaire. How to Be Very, Very Popular. He worked on Dallas. You've seen his work in many, many, many films, classic Hollywood films. He's the Thornbirds. I mean, this guy is no slouch. Then we have, for the design of the spaceship, who should we ask? How about Frank Lloyd Wright? What?
Frank Lloyd Wright had created this office space in 1936. It was in the Midwest. Johnson & Johnson?
Yeah. Johnson Wax.
Johnson
Wax. Floor wax?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
groundbreaking design.
It's
this building.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
It was gorgeous. And Frank Lloyd Wright also really loved publicity. He was always doing media. He was always doing press. You know, you don't know the names of a lot of architects. You know Frank Lloyd Wright because but he also was a visionary. And so the art direction was inspired by that building, like the circular and the way that it looks. So it looks
very space age, but it's not. It's so many. It's such an early. It's from the 30s, and one of the things that I think is really cool. There's a quote from Frank Lloyd Wright where he talks about how the spaceship. They make this big deal about how when the spaceship closes, it opens up and then it closes, like there's a hatch, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when the hatch closes, the whole thing is impermeable. It's a solid surface. And so he said that he was inspired by for the exterior of the spaceship, quote, to imitate an experimental substance that I have heard about, which acts like living tissue. If cut, the rift would appear to heal like a wound, leaving a continuous surface with no scar. And I believe that the substance that he is talking about is what we now know as corian, like for countertops.
Oh, I don't know what that is.
You don't know? Oh, so corian. So those of you in suburbia maybe know about corian countertops. It's a composite product of science, and it's very sturdy, like a granite countertop would be. But if you accidentally slice into it and you make a gash in it, you have to work really hard to do that. But if you make a gash in it, you can get it buffed so it totally heals over. And also, you can put like a piece of corian next to a piece of corian next to a piece of corian next to a piece of corian, and you can again buff it in such a way that it fuses. So you could have a piece of corian that goes for 1.5 miles if you wanted to. So I think this is the material that he's referring to that inspired him for the exterior of this spaceship. So those of you who have corian countertops,
wow, that's
yeah, they're not cheap. They cost as much as, if not more than,
marble
stone surface. Yeah, but they do last a very, very long time, and they do heal, which is kind of a cool thing. What I really liked about the production on the whole, it looks really plausible. Like, her home looks like a real home, like that a woman like that would have. She's a secretary at, like, I forget, the Department of the Interior or something like that, because she lives in Washington, D.C. She's a single mom. We assume she's a widow. It's after the war. And then she's got these people who live in this house. She kind of lives in sort of a boarding house kind of situation where the neighbors all come together for meals. She lives with Aunt B. We'll talk about that in a minute.
The cast is amazing.
But all of the locations, there's like, they go to this scientist, and he's got his little lab in the basement, and that's all very interesting. It's really, really good. It's so well done. I wish the poster were better. I think a lot of people must have been turned off by this poster, not realizing like it's a serious movie.
Yeah, it is kind of like dolling itself up to be like a monster picture when they're not the monster. This is a case of where we've had this from H.G. Wells and War of the Worlds, like anything coming from space is out to kill us. It's out to destroy us. And this is a story where they decided to make it about human beings created the atom bomb just a few years before.
It's a very different landscape.
Yeah. And what other things can we create to dominate and to get ahead in the world? And so it's so fascinating what they did here, because they still have the studio systems. They still have the Hays Code that they have to follow. And there's at one point they made the spaceman not scary and not evil. But when he shows up, everybody worships him. And so the way they get away with that is they give him the last name of Carpenter in the movie. And it's this Jesus parable.
Do we know that's a carpenter?
Jesus and pals. So so they create this parable of like, he's Christ and he's coming here to save us.
I am leaving soon, and you will forgive me if I speak bluntly. The universe grows smaller every day, and the threat of aggression by any group, anywhere, can no longer be tolerated. There must be security for all, or no one is secure. Now, this does not mean giving up any freedom, except the freedom to act irresponsibly. Your ancestors knew this when they made laws to govern themselves and hired policemen to enforce them. We of the other planets have long accepted this principle. We have an organization for the mutual protection of all planets and for the complete elimination of aggression. The test of any such higher authority is, of course, the police force that supports it. For our policemen, we created a race of robots. Their function is to patrol the planets in spaceships like this one and preserve the peace. In matters of aggression, we have given them absolute power over us. This power cannot be revoked. At the first sign of violence, they act automatically against the aggressor. The penalty for provoking their action is too terrible to risk. The result is we live in peace, without arms or armies, secure in the knowledge that we are free from aggression and war, free to pursue more profitable enterprises. We do not pretend to have achieved perfection, but we do have a system, and it works. I came here to give you these facts. It is no concern of ours how you run your own planet. But if you threaten to extend your violence, this Earth of yours will be reduced to a burned-out cinder.
And this is something you and I growing up Catholic
Yes.
in the Cold War era. This is something that we constantly. I had a Sunday school teacher and a Catholic school teacher to have this essay exercise. If Jesus Christ were to come to our world today, what would he say about such and such? What would he say about nuclear war? What would he say about this or that? And this is very that. It's like if Jesus were to come back and it's now a post-nuclear, post-World War II world where the US is in charge of a lot of stuff, what would he make of our world as the Cold War is brewing? Which is good. I mean, I think it works. I think it works super well.
My parents were that generation that had to do those drills, those bombing. Well, they have different drills nowadays, but they had the bombing drills, and so there was that fear of like, and that's what the space race is all about. You know, America, like, that's fighting Soviets, like, to get to space. Like, whoever owns that can then rule the world. And so there's that fear going on in DC, and there's that motivation that they have. So this picture, 1951, I mean, so we talked about the casting. So we have Michael Rennie is playing Klaatu.
Yes. So who in the film? We'll get to the plot points of the movie, but in the film, Klaatu is not killed as soon as he steps out of the spaceship. Spoiler alert. So because he's a character throughout the whole movie,
right? He lives.
Yeah, he lives.
Klaatu lives. And in this, we don't have. And I love this that they did this, but they have Patricia Neal as Helen Benson versus Cliff, the reporter. Who cares? This is
the reporter's not an interesting guy. He has no relationships with any other human for some reason. But we have this woman that we really, and it's Patricia Neal, who's fantastic and everything. She's a smart lady. She's a secretary in a very important government job, and she's a single mom. Her little boy, Bobby, is played by Billy Gray, who was Buddy on Father Knows Best. That's kind of the role he was a very, very famous child actor. He's super good.
He's
very,
great.
very good. And famously later became a very important advocate for child actors and former child actors, especially those who suffered abuse and exploitation. Like he really kind of a special guy, but a very, very gifted little guy in at this time. And so that's our mom and daughter and son. I think Bobby meets Klaatu first. The son, sorry, mom and son. He's not that good of an actor. They live. The mom has a boyfriend named Tom, who is played by Hugh Marlowe, who we talked about when we talked about All About Eve.
Yes.
He's kind of the other, not Gary Merrill, but the other guy who's in All About Eve. Very good looking. I mean,
they were friends.
They really kind of.
Patricia Neal said that they were old friends. They did scenes together before. Good
chemistry.
Great chemistry. Sam Jaffe is Professor Jacob Bernhard.
Lovely.
He was actually a mathematics professor who dabbled in acting. So this is a guy who actually knew like what he was put on that chalkboard. Like he had that, that's
really cool.
Bona fides going for him. Frances Bavier, is that how you said her name? She's Mrs. Barley.
Aunt B.
That's all I know her as, Aunt B from the Andy Griffith Show. And then we have Locke Martin as Gort. So Gort is the gigantic robot. Locke Martin was a man who had gigantism. He was over 7 feet tall, married, and had 9 kids. By the way, I wonder how tall they turned out to be.
I don't know.
But he I forget what he did. He was an usher at Grauman's Chinese Theater.
Yes,
And then
correct.
he also did some acting. And so he usually played monsters and aliens.
Giants.
Giants. Like Andre the Giant, we talked about The Princess Bride. He was
Mm-hmm.
this very tall, gigantic man. But Andre the Giant famously couldn't lift Robin Wright when he had to hold her because his back was such a mess from all those years of wrestling. And Lock Martin, also very frail. He could only be in that costume for maybe 30 minutes and then they had to get him out.
Oof.
So he's also not carrying her. But so they had to create the suit for him. So he was like 7'7" when they put the suit all together. And it's a great visual effect. I mean,
really is very well done.
It's
not overly wrought. Like it's just enough. It's very modern looking. So he was in a short selection of films, including Lady on a Train, Invaders from Mars.
Yes.
He plays a Yeti in a movie called The Snow Creature. So I just got to give you an idea. It's a great cast. It's a super good cast. And then we have a bunch of people, like when the spaceship lands, there's all, and I really love this. It's 1951, right?
I knew you would.
Okay. It's pre Brown versus Board of Education. It's pre Civil Rights Movement. The spaceship lands in Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, which is even then was a very diverse community. And so like people from all walks of life converge on this, park, lawn where the spaceship has landed. So we've got Black families, we've got different ages, you could see by their clothing, by their costumes, different economic status. We have very wealthy, influential people who show up. We've got military people who show up, but we also got just regular people who happen to be out for a day in the park with their kids and all, which is really cool. And so everyone is shown on very much equal footing. Like this, as a quote unquote, this is society who's hanging out in our nation's capital on a Saturday afternoon or whatever it's supposed to be. And this is who's there. And it's not segregated. It's not divided by class or anything like that. Everybody's just out enjoying the nice day when this thing happens. And it's just really, and the camera like really holds each of these different little factions. Like they want you to see this is who's there. Americans. They're in the capital of our nation. These are our people. These are the American people who are out in this park. It's amazing. It's so good. And then you've got the score, the Bernard. I mean, it's awesome. And so Klaatu, the spaceship, this Frank Lloyd Wright spaceship. I mean, they are just doing this. Very classy.
Yeah.
So the Frank Lloyd Wright ship lands and Klaatu steps out. And then similar to the original story, he's like, "Hey, I'm Klaatu. Come in peace. I've got a message." And of course, somebody's like, "Pew!"
The Army, by the way, the United States military did get a copy of the script and didn't approve of it, but there's a local cavalry wherever they were filming, and so they used their equipment.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very interesting. So yeah, what happens is Klaatu reaches it. He has a pocket. His spaceship has a pocket because everybody should have pockets.
Pockets, yep.
And he reaches in and he pulls out this little. It looks kind of like the thing you use to give yourself a head massage, like little prongy things. It doesn't look like a weapon at all, but because he's pulled this thing out of his pocket, some rogue soldier shoots him, and he's like, "What do you do?" Klaatu's like, "I was going to give this to your president. It's so he could talk to other planets, but okay." I guess it's garbage now. But he's only shot. He's not killed. He's shot, but he's not killed. And he's taken to Walter Reed Hospital. Unlike in the story, here's where we immediately diverge away from the original story. He heals instantly because he's a magical spaceman. And they're like, but we can't let everybody know. Like everybody saw that the spaceship landed. Everybody saw that the spaceman came out and got shot and was taken to Walter Reed Hospital. But we can't let him be out in the public around like humans. But he's a magical spaceman. So of course he gets out.
Yeah.
Gets out, gets himself a suit of clothes. He's like, my name is Carpenter. He sees it someplace or other on a sign or something. And he's like, oh, that's a good name for a Jesus-y spaceman. Space Jesus. I'm Mr. Carpenter. I don't remember if he meets Bobby first or he shows up. He wants a room. He wants a room in the boarding house where Patricia, Neal, and Aunt B and Bobby and this other guy live. And they rent him a room because, like, sure, stranger walks into the house.
It's different
It's
time.
1951. You seem fine. Have a room.
That's a nice suit. Sure. You stay with
And
us.
yeah, you seem clean.
Checks out.
And Bobby immediately takes a liking to him. They know at this point that the spaceman is on the loose because the government is looking for him. And so Bobby becomes friends with him. Bobby suspects that Klaatu, aka Mr. Carpenter, is some kind of like a FBI agent who's looking for the spaceman. He doesn't realize that this is the spaceman right away. And so we get some really nice interaction of him and Bobby, Klaatu and Bobby, like painting the town.
They're hanging
really
out
cute.
in DC and having a great time. And they're great friends. I really kind of appreciated that Helen and her boyfriend Tom, like Tom gets a little jealous of him because Tom really wants to woo her. Like Tom wants to marry her and bring her to Chicago.
He wants to marry her and she's like,
I don't know. I got to think about it. I love her.
Yeah.
She's so strong and she's just her own person. And Bobby is like looking for a father figure. I think he likes Tom fine, but you know, this new guy's kind of super fun. He's taking him out of school and they're just like you said, they're just painting the town red. And I love everything that they go to the Lincoln Memorial and they go to the Arlington Cemetery. I mean, these are very important places.
So that's the thing is Bobby's father is buried at Arlington Cemetery. So again, this is right after World War II. It's very fresh for people. So Bobby, this little boy, talks to this alien. We know he's an alien about like, what does Arlington Cemetery mean? And what does it mean that these people, Bobby's perfectly healthy father was instantly, struck down and it's really, really good. There's this plot point that Klaatu has a message. He's got, very Jesus-y. So Space Jesus has a message for us, but he doesn't want to tell just anybody because we don't want to waste his time. He wants to talk to all of the world leaders at once. And when he's in Walter Reed Hospital, there's somebody from the president's office who comes to see him. And he's like, I have a message. And the guy's like, great, I'm the president's guy. Tell me, I'll take it over to the president right now. And he's like, no, I need to talk to all of the leaders at once. Can you get all of the leaders? Just put them all in a room so I can talk to them all at the same time. And the guy's like, actually, it's the beginning of the Cold War. And we just had this World War. So we don't all really get along that great. That's kind of a tall order, Mr. Space Guy.
There's no Zoom in 1951.
There's no zooming in. No. We're not going to fly in. And he's like, and also Klaatu, and this is really cool too. Klaatu goes, what about this United Nations I heard about? Which is cool. And the president's guy was like, yeah, there's that. But first of all, we say United Nations, but it's actually not all the nations. Like you're saying you want all the nations. It's not really. That's just some of them. And he's like, no, I definitely want all of the nations. And he's not getting anywhere. And that's why he escapes the hospital. And so he says to Bobby, his friend, he's like, I'm not able to get all, he says, since I'm not able to find all of the most powerful people, like all the leaders of nations together at one table, maybe I could get all of the smartest people that those people will listen to together. And he says to Bobby, who is the smartest person in Washington, D.C.? And Bobby's like, oh, it's Professor, what's his name?
Barnhart.
The B, I think. Barnhart. That's Professor Barnhart. He's the smartest man. And so they go to Barnhart's lab. Barnhart is not at home. But there's an equation that he's been working on for months and months and months and months on the chalkboard. And Klaatu, of course, like just strolls up and doesn't want to spoil his fun. He just kind of helps him out a little bit with a couple of little clues
Matt
here and
Damon's
there.
it.
He does fully. And he leaves a calling card. I'm Mr. Carpenter. I'm rooming at this house. Please have the professor get in touch with me, which he does. And then he wins the professor over with his sciencey skills, out of this world science skills. And the professor is trying to help him get all of the smartest people together, but it's taking a minute. It takes a minute. Meanwhile, the hysteria is building because the spaceship and the robot are still standing there as they are in the story. And people are really people are afraid of the spaceman. And he knows, like, they've already shot him once.
Right.
For no reason.
And there are tanks surrounding it. Yeah.
Now they think he's dangerous. And so, yeah, he can't just like walk into his spaceship and go away. So but through Bobby, and this is really fun too about it. Like, it's the little boy that is the key component in this whole story. So the little boy forms the friendship with the alien. The little boy tells his mom the truth, but she doesn't believe him right away. But eventually he convinces her, and she now is on the side of the alien as well. So now we have the mom and the son who are on team Klaatu. Yay. And there's a little bit of sexual tension there. With Patricia Neal and Mr. Because he's handsome. He's very handsome. Yeah, he's handsome.
And apparently, Margot,
smart.
He flirted with Billy Gray's mother. And Billy Gray thinks his mother and him had a thing going.
Ooh,
at the time. But he said he was a very nice man. He was okay with it. Like, he really liked it. I know. There's so many good stories.
So cool.
We cover so many movies where there's like a terrible history on the set, or there's just like nobody remembers it. And this is the opposite. This is where like people have really good feelings about it.
It's really super good. So he knows like he doesn't have the best chances. He's not going to maybe not have time to deliver his message. He does eventually deliver it. They get as many of those guys together, those smart guys together as they possibly can. Professor really is trying. He's making a lot of calls. And he does gather together some smart folks there at the spaceship. Klaatu tells Patricia Neal that if anything happens to him, aka if they shoot me again, because I'm here in the United States, you guys seem to like to
love
shoot
your
me.
guns, your Second Amendment people.
He says, all you need to make sure that you give this message in my language, give this message to the robot. Otherwise, he's going to destroy everything. Just so you know, he's kind of fond of me. And unless you give him this message to stand down, he's not going to stand down. He delivers his message to the smart guys, to the smart people, which is basically, hey, humans, what are you doing with this nuclear stuff? You got to stop messing around. What you're messing with is so destructive that it's starting to impact the rest of us in the galaxy, and we're not going to really put up with that. Like, you're cute having your little world wars and cold wars and whatnot here, and that's fine as long as you're not hurting anybody else in the galaxy. But this is very serious now. You actually could like mess things up for everybody, and we're not going to let that happen. So if we see that going on, if you guys are going to continue on this road, Earth is going to be over. Sorry. It's nothing personal, but that's what's going to happen. So that's his message, which is, kind of the message of the nuclear age, and kind of how the Cold War sustained itself for so long, because they had theirs and we had ours, and everybody was, the quote unquote Mexican standoff.
We should also say that he gives Helen something to say, which is what they have that they created for the picture that's not from the story, which is Klaatu, Barada, Nikto.
None of this stuff what we're talking about.
Nikto. Klaatu. Barada. Nikto.
This is,
Very
by the way,
famous
is this your
line.
first time watching the movie? It's my first time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So people who love this movie and seen it 1,000 times, this is new for us. So please forgive us if we don't get everything. But
Yeah.
apparently this is a big deal. Klaatu, Barada, Nikto. This is what she says.
She's saying it to Gort.
Gort.
His name is in the
Sorry,
movie,
y'all.
the robot.
She says
Yes.
that to Gort, and that shuts Gort down. That keeps him from shooting people and destroying everything. Like she's terrified when she says it to him. Like when Patricia Neal
Yeah.
like sneaks onto the ship and she has to, because he's been shot again. You're right. And so she's saying, Gort, no, don't blow people up. It's okay. And so it's like it buys them a little bit of time, and then apparently that's something that's used in science fiction all the time. Since then, it's I don't know. But Klaatu is shot and killed, and he's moved to a separate place. And then, but then Gort, who at one point, Gort takes her onto the ship, and it's with strings and stuff to help him. And you could apparently see on the costume in high def, you could see where they have the seams, but normally you can't. I mean, these costumes are incredible.
They really are.
They look amazing. But anyway, they retrieve his body to bring it back. And then this, as you know, it's very Jesus-y. Like Jesus is being revived, and
he is resurrected for a brief time.
He knows
like,
it's only
like
for a
our
bit.
Mr. Jesus.
Right. He basically says, and this is, your choice is simple. Join us and live in peace, or pursue your present course and face obliteration. We shall be waiting for your answer. And then he takes off. And we have all over the world. I mean, by the way, they call it the day the earth stood still, because there's at one point where he has the power to stop everything happening on Earth. So no machines are working. The only things is like the hospitals and planes flying, they can keep going, but everything else, all the cars, everything stops. So people,
telephones, radios, all of that.
So that's like the point where he's able to transmit his message to everybody. And we understand that they show us these vignettes around the world, in Russia and France, all over the world, that
you see like remote people in like a little village hut, and they're like, it's the spaceman.
And they're having wine and
everybody
cheese.
knows about it.
It's Paris, like, whoa, but get it
back. French one
baguette.
is hilarious. Ho ho ho. L'espace. L'homme d'espace.
Ils sont fous. So yeah, that's the end of the movie. I mean, they're basically saying that you're blowing yourself up, and that's going to actually affect everything here. So y'all need to keep a tamper on that. And this is like Gort. Gort is like the purpose of Gort is that Gort is a huge robot that can witness everything, that keeps its eye on what's going on planet. They put them on all the planets in the universe, in the solar system, whatever you want to call it. And this Gort knows where all those things are happening. And so he's going to keep an eye on what we're doing. And so they're going to, if we screw up and we start another world war, they're going to finish it for us. That's the idea. Like, you think you're in power, but ultimately we have the power to blow up the world if we want to. And this is very new for 1951 for movie-going audiences. Like, you and I grow up and it's Star Wars and all these, like, there's always a science fiction movie happening. There's always like sci-fi on TV. This is years before Twilight Zone. This is years before all of that. I mean, this is, so I get it now. Like, it's a precursor to all of that, the art that comes out during the Cold War. And we had so much music devoted to Russians and movies about Russians invading us. I mean, just so much of that. And they're saying, like, yes, okay, we understand that there are threats and you do need to protect yourself, but if you're overdoing it, you're just going to blow everything up for everybody. And so what does that get you? That's the point of the movie.
It's great.
And it's great. It's really well done. It looks amazing.
It looks really good.
It looks current.
I was just stunned. Because I was expecting, based on the poster and based on the story that we read, I was ready for like pulpy. You can see the strings holding the spaceship. Yep. I knew Patricia Neal, and I was like, I don't know what she's doing in this thing, but okay. From the very first scene, I'm like, whoa, wow, huh? Look at that. Look at you, the day the earth stood still. This is great.
The acting is great. The dialogue is
really
great.
Good.
It's really believable. The special effects are really good. I was just completely blown away by this. And I was like, why wasn't it nominated for all the awards? 1952 is when they would have the Academy Awards in March. It was An American in Paris, A Streetcar Named Desire, A Place in the Sun, like really good year for movies going on.
One of those years.
Yeah, one of those years. All the actors and directors are back from the war. It's really great. I'm so surprised. But then like when people now say that that they're huge fans of this movie, I totally get it. And this is one of the top robots in movies ever created. And I loved it. I thought it was amazing. Klaatu, Barada, Nikto. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. They created a language. It's amazing what they did.
Very impressive. They did everything right. They really took their time and really thought about every little detail. And you can tell it's every little detail about the poster. Who was asleep at the switch when we made this poster is what I want to know.
It reminds me of The Creature of the Black Lagoon.
Yeah.
The Creature from the Black Lagoon. Is that what the proper title?
It looks a lot like that.
It's like a universal picture, which I'm not putting it down, but I also have the same brain when I see that kind of a
film is.
No, this is much smarter. This is a very smart movie.
Mm-hmm.
I bet it was really fun to watch in the movie theater.
I'm sure it must have been. It's
like at Radio good, City or something like that. That would have been amazing.
I love it. I love it. I can't believe this is so not my thing, but I really like this film a lot. Yeah. A lot.
That's what we do this show. It's sometimes it's just to try something new. It's good for you.
I'm going to be honest. I put off watching it. I was like, oh, I got to watch The Day the Earth and stuff. And then like literally from the opening scene, I was just, whoa, what? Oh, wow.
It's because this short story is not great, y'all. It's not even a tie for me. It's not a struggle.
No, not even close.
I never want to read this again.
No, I won't be reading that story again.
God bless him. I mean, what you did, sir, and your service. It's a great story. I love sci-fi, all that, but this movie is like 1,000 times better. It's fantastic.
I'm not a sci-fi person, and I really enjoyed it. I really, really liked it a lot. Okay, so clear winner this week.
Yes.
Far and away movie. What are we doing next in October?
Well, we do love our Stephen King, but our Stephen King that we cover is not as gory as other people would. Margot is not.
I really have to draw the line.
Yes.
I really must. As much as I do love Stephen King, I think he is one of the best. He's one of my favorite American writers. I think he is such a brilliant, brilliant writer. But I can't with the slashy and the gore and the
killer children and things like that. That's not her bag.
No.
We're not going to do Cujo anytime or Pet Sematary or any of those others. So we're going to talk about a movie that I just love, and it's called Dolores Claiborne, and it stars Kathy Bates, who is in a new version of Matlock, which I watched, Margot. Oh my God, it's so good. Right? It's so
I
good.
know.
Oh my God.
I know.
I'm so excited about this show.
You guys listen. I mean, we're not sponsored or anything, but I want to tell you. There's a new version. If you haven't heard about it, there's a new series of Matlock coming out starring Kathy Bates.
Right.
And they put out a teaser first episode. I don't know when the rest of them are going to air, but there's the first episode is available for free. You can watch it online. It's so good.
It's so smart.
It's so good.
It's really smart. And she's a brilliant character. Jennifer Jason Leigh is her co-star. And so that's going to be the next episode. We're both super excited about that. And then we have something really fun coming after that. So we have like one more we need to come up with for October. But please send us your suggestions, all those places